Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we're looking at a third submission by Victoria and Dylan. Now, the last time we saw this horse, she had a pretty good swinging trot on the lunge line, but it wasn't really coming through very well behind under saddle, and my suggestion was to do more of the lunging and get the horse working a little more over its back before we worry about doing too much under saddle. But I see that I have, of course, watched this whole videotape before I'm commenting on it. And she's using the chambon now, and I think this is good. The horse was doing pretty well in the side reins and the lunging work, but I think you're right to go to the chambon here. It will help your riding here quite a bit. This walk is looking a little better. It's still a little stuck in the mud. We'd like to see it swing a little more actively there. But this is an improvement over what I've seen before, and the neck is getting out and longer. So that's very good and in the direction that we want to be going. And once she gets into the trot, once again, from the last video that I saw, this trot already looks better. And once again, I'll say this is the same issue here. Is the under saddle work on this tape looks a lot better than the last time. And that's coming along. And just know that that's what you do by doing this lunging work. You'll be able to improve him, and then he'll get stronger. Because if you look at this horse, behind the saddle there's quite a dip. You can tell he's been hollow for quite some time. It's a big horse, but it doesn't have a lot of development over its top line. But this is a much better trot than what I saw in the last video. He's already stretching deeper. So it may be that the chambon is a better choice for this horse. It often is, especially in the beginning until the horses just really get stretching out and moving correctly. So this is a good choice for this horse. And once again, I like this trot much better on the lunge line. And I would say the same thing here. This trot is on the lunge line is even better than the last one. And same kind of thing once you get up there. It's not quite as good as it was on the lunge line. But that's to be expected. But it is improved over the other tape, so that's progress in the right direction. That's good, and you certainly have the chambon correctly adjusted. That's about right. And you'd ask me about ride. There is no problem with riding in a chambon. As long as it's correctly adjusted and not over-tightened, you should be able to ride with it without any problem at all. In fact, I once went to a place in France where all the horses went in and even galloped cross-country in them. I was surprised at that. And certainly never saw any problems with them. I would tend to keep this on in a ring. I don't like to have anything that restricts the horse's head and neck when I'm going out, only because you never know if a horse may step and they may need to throw their head straight up in the air to regain their balance, which is what they do. Which is, once again, why they outlawed standing martingales in international competition, because so many people had gotten flipped over on, because that's what happens. If a horse starts to fall, it can't get its head up, it's going to want to come on over behind on top of you, and that, of course, is the worst thing that you can have happen. Now, looking at this horse's canter, it actually canters quite well. There's some horses that I suggest people just don't canter at all, but this horse, is able to canter, and it's able to stay in unison. That is, its front and back ends are cantering together. And just what you did there, short periods of time, is just what you want, and I like how the horse is more active once it comes back to the stretch. This is a much more active horse that I saw in the previous video of the horse. So this is all good and just very much in the direction that we want to go, just more of it. So now we're going to see some under saddle work in the chambon. And this starts out, once again, kind of like the walk did in the lunge line. It's a little bit slow. We want to get it much more swinging, but compared to the last time I saw it, it's an improvement. So that's all very good. And once again, as I said, there's nothing wrong with riding in the chambon. And as to how long to keep the chambon on, well, it's like anything else. You just have to kind of test the waters. I would keep it on for a while, a few weeks, and then take it off and see if you can still get the same responses out of the horse if you've learned to soften the horse's mouth and get it to stretch and accept the contact. Before long, you won't need the chambon at all. But so just test it. I would say every couple of weeks or so, or week or so, whenever you like, just try it and see if the horse goes better without the chambon on, which it very well or at least goes as well. And you'll get to that point before long if you just keep up the good work here. Now, this walk is better here. Notice always, as the longer the horse stretches into the contact, the better the back end of the horse moves generally, and especially if you just keep him there. I feel like you could ask for just a little more activity in the walk right there. Once you get him to stretch, then encourage a little more forward action there as you can. But this is an improvement over what I've seen in the past. And same thing with here. This is where you want this horse to be, all the way down there. That's where you want it to be. I'd like to see you send it on a little bit more forward, but once again, you could see there as the horse came by, you can clearly see the big dip behind the saddle there going to the croup, and that should all be filled up. In time, that will. That's not the normal conformation for a horse. It's just the normal conformation. People have become used to seeing that because so many horses today are going around hollow and undeveloped. And people have sort of become used to seeing these tented hips, that is, and hollowness behind the back, and that's we have to get out of that as being an ordinary thing that we want to see, because we don't want to see that at all. We want to see more like what you have here, and we want to see that hole develop and fill up behind the saddle there, which it will do in time if you keep up the work that you're doing here. This is really good. And once again, the chambon work, I like the horse in the trot better with the chambon than without it, as it was. This is really where you want him to be, down there, and even a little bit lower. That's where that horse has to be. You can still see this horse is moving kind of flat-footed. It isn't really thrusting much off the ground yet. The hind legs kind of come forward. There isn't much push off of the hind legs yet, but there will be if you keep up the work right there. Like, that's quite good, though I still feel like you could just send the horse on just a little bit more than that and get a little more out of it. And once again, I like how you're keeping everything to simple turns and circles. You can see how that kind of slowed the horse down. That's what happens to so many big horses. What this horse looks like it is to me is they get shortened up right away from the beginning, and before long they have almost no stride at all, and the back drops. A lot of people are afraid of big horses and afraid of a big horse's stride. So I don't think that's you, because you seem to be handling this horse just fine. But that's often what happens to the big ones in the beginning, is they're ridden by people who aren't used to horse with a really big stride, and they're afraid of moving that fast or actively, so they tend to shut them down. I run into a lot of big horses these days with that same problem. There, that's looking really good there. And look how much rounder the hock action is when it gets in that position. And that's what you're looking for, is that ultimate, optimal, shall I say, position of the back that allows the hind legs to come through in such a way that the horse's back will develop over time. And I think you're getting there with this. Could be a little lower there. Once again, just keep watching and see how different it looks when you get the stretch all the way out there. Remembering, that this is not a 2-week-long process. To get a horse to develop correctly, it's beginning years, and once again, that doesn't matter whether you're starting with a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old. It takes 2 years for the horse's body to go through the changes necessary for it to develop a more uphill appearance and develop a completely developed top line that allows you to begin to develop collection. Remembering once again what collection is. That is the lowering of the 3 joints of the hind leg, and the maintenance of that position. Now I can see this horse still looks, one of the things we look for is that we look for the belly to begin to be drawn up, and you can see this horse is a little pendulous in its flanks there. That is, it looks quite dropped down. It hasn't really learned to engage its core enough, but it will, once again, if you go on working the way you're working. What you'll begin to notice is those kind of flabby flanks, so to speak, will go away, and you'll see the horse start to pull up through its midsection there and lower abdominal section, just like a person. Pilates is what people do. Well, correct riding is just Pilates for horses. It's strengthening their core. So it's not just the back, it's also the bottom line muscles have to pull up, just like they do for a human being when you see a person engage their core. Like if you're going to the gym, you should be doing every exercise with your core engaged. Then you're working your whole body and not just working on individual muscles as we often see people doing. The same thing is true of the horse. We're trying to get the horse to work over his top line and work all the muscles in unison. So we're not just working one part of the horse. And of course, one of the biggest things that we see in horses that aren't working right, as you saw with this one a little bit, is they become ewe-necked. You see how he went over those poles, the neck kind of pulled up, and you could see that the horse was really quite ewe-necked, and that tells me that the horse is starting to pull with the shoulders there. So when you see horses that are really developed underneath side of the neck, that tells you they've been pulling with their shoulders instead of propelling themselves forward from the center of the body with the hind legs. So I would keep the trotting poles to a minimum. I would start off with 1 until you can get over 1 without the horse changing position, and then add more poles in the way. But there's no point in going over 3 poles if the horse is going to hollow over the very first one. So once again here, I'd just like to see your trot a little more active. And even, I could say this indoor arena is quite small for this big of a horse. So try to move him out a little more actively. Once again, keeping your turns and circles to simple, very wide turns and circles, so we can keep him moving forward and straight, as the old masters used to say, forward and straight. But a lot of people misunderstood what forward means. It doesn't mean running. Forward means to engage forward under the body and go straight. That is, to engage the hind end under the body and go straight. It doesn't mean to run straight ahead in that direction, which is a bit confusing for people who've misunderstood what it means to go forward. This is a better trot now. There, I love it when he stretches into the contact there. It's much, much better. There's where you want him. And look how much better that looks. You start to see a little thrust from the hind legs until his head comes up. And as soon as his head pops up, the back end just goes to kind of flat footing along and without really thrusting and lifting you and carrying you across the ground, which it will ultimately do if you keep up this work. So this is all showing a lot of improvement over the last video that I saw. It's certainly more active and you're getting more stretch into the contact. The riding work here is much, much better. In the first video, or the last video I saw of you lunging, he was pretty good just in the side reins, but it was definitely much better in the chambon. And it's certainly not a problem to ride in the chambon for a while until you start to see all of these things develop. That is the top line developing. You'll begin to see the hole behind the saddle there that will start to fill up. And you will also see the abdominal wall pull up as the horse begins to work through its whole core. So continuing to work through that is what you want to do. This is good when you get him right there. And that's why even in this small arena, like this is such a big horse, you really need to be in almost a twice as wide arena as this to really get this horse moving out in terms of on a circle. So I would spend plenty of time just going straight ahead as you're doing here and working it a little more actively when you come down the long sides. And once again, keep watching at how closely the horse changes when it really gets in a good frame and starts to swing, like right there. That's what we're looking for, right there. Had a few really good strides and the hind end really came through. That's what we want to see. So keep working towards that. Going back to the walk, this is good, but try to make it more active. And that's a good clear shot. You can also see, once again, how just sort of distended the horse's belly is a little bit there. You know, that's going to pull up a lot more and develop a lot in the near future if you keep up the work that you're doing. So once again, coming back to the walk, I would like to see you always working for that little bigger, more swinging action there. And certainly, you know, if you take the horse outside, you can keep the chambon on. You know, I wouldn't do a lot of trotting outside on uneven ground in the chambon, but, you know, when you're going out for a nice hack, if you're in an area where you can do that, by all means, keep the chambon on and just really try to get the horse working out and stretching deeper. And, you know, sometimes horses just get kind of bored with an arena, you know, and they kind of don't give you much for a while. And in which case sometimes going outside or even going out with another horse or even walking in the arena with another horse is a good idea. Put one in front of you. I had a particularly difficult horse some years ago and I was down on the Florida circuit and I was able to take it out and just put other horses in front of it. It was a horse that had been rolkered terribly and had been just turned off to dressage to the point that it would flip over if you got anywhere near a dressage arena. And I took it fox hunting for a while and just got out other horses in front of it. You know, it was a horse that was totally shut off. And after a season fox hunting, the horse was like a different animal because it got out there and started to enjoy itself again and move forward and stopped being crammed into a frame. And that's ended up being the horse that I won my silver medal on, which was given to me because they were going to put it to sleep. It had become so vicious. And it was a horse that had come from one of the top barns in Europe and had been drugged when the woman bought it. When they got it home, they found that it was pretty much a grizzly bear and would savage anybody who got near it. And sadly, they didn't send it back, but I took it since they were going to put it to sleep and was able to do a lot with it. And it went on to go back to its original owner after I showed it. And she went on to be Prix St. George Horse of the Year on the Horse in a Region and had a great time with it once it came back around. So getting horses in company with other horses is a good thing, especially when you have ones that are really quiet and they don't want to work hard. You know, put another horse in front of them sometimes, get out on the trails, and it can really do wonders for the horse's mentality because it is very much a natural thing for horses to work in herds and want to keep up, you know, so to speak. That's a very natural thing for a herd instinct animal. Once again, this trot looks good. Much improved over the last time I saw you in the saddle. And once again, as I said, I would just keep riding this horse in a chambon for a while and just testing it every few weeks. That's really good. When he drops down there a little deeper, it looks even better. You know, it's so clear to see once you begin to watch the back end of the horse instead of the front end of the horse, you really begin to see the changes starting to take place. And you can see this one, like when he gets there, it gets a little high-headed. The back end doesn't swing through as much. The lower he gets, the more he swings through, and that's what we're looking for. Finding that position that allows that to happen. You can see even there, even that that large of a circle in this indoor arena. I don't know how big this arena is, but it looks like it's probably only about a full-size dressage arena. I work my horses, you know, not in a dressage ring more than I work in a dressage ring, especially the big ones. because they need space to move around in the beginning. So even a dressage ring, kind of they came up with the size of a dressage ring, many years ago, and not so many horses were as big as they are now, especially the ones used for dressage. So it's very important that you get big horses, or in a space like this, don't spend a lot of time circling when you're on their back. Just keep going there. That's looking better as he stretches into the contact there. And just keep them going on those big open straight lines. Every time you get this horse straight, it looks better and starts to stretch into the contact. And you can see, and that was a good corner there. It didn't lose too much rhythm there. Still needs to be swinging a little more active, but that's much, much better, and he's getting deeper into the contact. So that's all very good, and is certainly headed in the right direction from the last video. That especially the under saddle work here is much, much better. There you go, like that. That's where you want to see him, all the way down like that. Simple turns. People often make the mistake of driving horses, that everyone tells, go in the corners, go in the corners. Well, you don't want to drive a horse's head into the corners. So your corner should be a quarter of the smallest circle that you can perform. So if the smallest circle that you're performing is a 20-meter circle, and from the size of this horse and looks of it, that's even hard for this horse at the moment. So your corner should be a quarter of that 20-meter circle. So you're going to start turning a lot more before the corner than you would on a more advanced horse. So the rhythm is what tells us everything. So once again, if you can't perform the circle without the horse losing the rhythm, it's probably not having any quality for the horse anyway. So why bother to waste your time doing it? Because it will just throw the horse onto the forehand and end up hurting his legs if you do too much of it. So these big horses need to be on big circles. This is good here. It's looking better. Each time he stretches in, it just looks that much better. And once again, compared to the last video, this is a huge improvement. Little better circle that time. He didn't slow down quite so much or lose his back end quite so much on that circle. And by all means, that is the smallest circle that you should be making with this horse. You could be doing some little light leg yields, just turning on the quarter line rather than the center line. You got to turn where the horse is comfortable, where you can keep the rhythm. Once again, if the horse loses the rhythm, you lose the gymnastic quality. So the rhythm and the position of the horse's back is what guides us. If we're losing the rhythm or we're losing the horse's back, we know something is going wrong, and usually that we're simply asking the horse to do something that it's not physically ready to do yet. And of course, that becomes a pointless activity, and also why we see so many people today fighting with their so-called dressage horses, because they're trying to pull them into a frame. You can't pull a horse into any kind of meaningful frame. You can only get them to engage deeper underneath their bodies to change, and then ultimately to collect. Remember what collection means. It doesn't mean the shortening thing that we see so many people doing. They think they're collecting. All they're really doing is going short. They're shortening the horse's stride, which gives them a false sense of security. And on really good movers, they get this kind of phony bounce off the ground, on these really superior moving horses. This one would not do that. If you slowed this horse down, all you'd get was a nothing trot. So this one you want to keep swinging as you do all of them. Swinging open, finding that place where the top line's able to work so it would develop. And see how even that circle, he started to slow down there a little bit. So once again, opening the horse forward a little more, keeping to those straight lines, forward and straight, as the old masters used to say. Always remembering that forward and straight means. Now this, and that was about the right place to turn for a leg yield, turning by the quarter line there. That was not bad, but you can see the horse hollowed a little bit against it. So while you're doing your leg yield, and keep trying to soften the horse through the jaw and pull, and so it stays in that stretched position. Our goal, once again, is to do the leg yield without changing the frame. So yes, the horse has to learn to move off the leg, and sometimes we have to slow down a little bit just to get the horse into the idea that that's what we're doing. But we want to keep the rhythm as much as possible. So to do a bunch of leg yields that totally lose the horse's rhythm is not going to do you a whole lot of good. Doing a few of them, getting them moving off the leg, and working towards keeping that rhythm and the frame that allows it to happen best. Because once again, as soon as we shorten the frame and try to do a leg yield, it even makes it difficult because the horse is no longer stepping under the body, so it's hard for it to reach over and under, and the horses tend to hit their legs together, which is why both in the leg yield and in the half pass, it's so important that the hindquarters do not lead the exercise, that the shoulders slightly lead, which gives the horse an angle to let the horse's legs come through. But this is good. Once again, this is a big improvement over the last video that I saw. He's moving more actively, swinging. In the last video I saw, the horse was very often just sort of stumbling along out behind. It was losing its hindquarters a lot, and this time I've hardly seen that happen at all. So that's a big improvement over what we saw the last time. This is good. And once again, you can also canter in the chambon if that was a question of yours. I don't know if you did it on here or not yet, but But that's perfectly fine. Get the horse to stretch because we want ultimately the horse to stretch in all three gaits. Good there, and you can see how he's trying to find his place. Once again, you could ask him to just swing a little more actively, but that's looking better there. I like it there. That's very good. Could still be a little deeper and out ahead of him just a little bit more, but this is really coming beautifully. You're doing a great job with this. You know, most people that can ride, you know, if they would call themselves an intermediate rider, so to speak, I mean, they can walk, trot, and canter and feel comfortable on the back of a horse, can train their own horse if they once they understand the steps that are necessary. Too often today we see people, I see people I talk to all the time, I ask them where their horse is, they go, oh, it's with the trainer. Well, why aren't you riding it? Oh, well, I could ride it when I bought the horse, but now I can't. Well, if you could buy the horse when you ride it when you got it, and after 3 months with the trainer you can't, there's something wrong with what's going on there. And what often that is that, you know, these trainers who ride very heavy-handed, pulling the horses against the bit, you know, and beating them up a lot to make them active, this kind of thing. The students can never ride that way because hopefully they're not that obnoxious a human being. You know, that you should feel bad every time you have to hit an animal, you know, and if you're not that kind of person, you'll have a hard time with that kind of riding. So if your horses become more complicated. Now this is really beautiful right here. That's some of the best trot we've seen right there. Got a little slow as it came to that corner, but it's starting to swing much, much better. So as I said, you know, if your horse is getting more difficult to ride rather than easier to ride under the tutelage of a trainer, there's something seriously going wrong, and that's usually what it is the horses are being held together against the hand, and the student who isn't that quick or that willing to beat up the horse can't get the same job done. So don't be mistaken, they're not really getting the job done. All they're doing is getting a phony frame that's making the horse half crazy, which is why it won't stay on the bridle, and they're having to do it by force. Once again, you can see how the horse lost the back end a little bit. You can see how, you know, even that wide a turn is quite difficult for this horse. But once again, compared to the last time I saw this horse, this is much improved on the other saddle work. So once again, I would just keep the chambon on for a while and just test it every few weeks or every week whenever you feel like it. You can always put it back on. You know, you can start without it on, and you find you need it, put it back on. But it won't take long. If you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to see that hole fill up behind the saddle. It's going to become swinging and more active. But know that it takes a couple of years to fully develop this. You know, 1 year to develop the top line, 2 years to fully develop it to the point that you can do collection. So great job, Victoria. You're doing a wonderful job with this. There, right there was really, really good. I love to see that. Keep up the good work and you're going to get there with this horse. Really, really nice. And it looks like it's going to be a really nice horse once you do. There, that's quite nice there. Just a little more swing. So keep trying to just add a little bit more to that. Get the horse a little more active. But compared to what we saw, that was really nice. And always take your time in those downwards transitions. You know, don't put your weight on quite so soon. This is Will Faerber from Art to Ride. Talk to you next time.